Okay, let's be real for a second. Sometimes all this personal finance advice out there, it just feels like the same old song and dance, Budget, invest, rinse, and repeat. But what if I told you there's a book that actually ditches the complicated formulas and gets into the psychology behind how we think about money?
Yeah, it's kind of amazing how often we get caught up in the numbers and completely forget about the human element, the way we feel about money, the way we think about money. It has a huge impact on how we actually handle our finances, probably more than we realize, to be honest.
And that's exactly what makes this book, The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel, so interesting. I'll be honest, before we did this deep dive, I thought it was going to be like another book about picking stocks or something.
Oh, I thought so too.
Right. But it's not about becoming some kind of Wall Street wizard.
Not at all.
It's about getting why we do the things we do with money.
Exactly. Exactly. It's like he gets into those decisions we make with money, the ones that aren't always rational.
Oh, yeah, those emotional decisions.
Yes, and how those decisions can completely change our financial lives, for better or worse.
Definitely for better or worse. And to really show this, he talks about these two totally opposite people. Um, Ronald Reed, he was a janitor who somehow built this $8 million fortune. And then there's Mike Tyson. I mean, the guy made hundreds of millions.
Hundreds of millions.
And ended up broke. It's crazy. You couldn't have two more different stories.
You really couldn't. And I think that's Housel's point. Their stories, they challenge the idea that financial success is all about, being a genius.
Or even just having a ton of money to begin with.
Exactly.
It's like Ronald Reed, he's like living proof that slow and steady wins the race.
Totally.
While Mike Tyson shows that you can have it all and still lose it if you don't have the right, mindset about money.
Yeah, your mindset matters.
So let's dig into this idea that behavior beats intelligence, because it seems like that's a really important part of the book.
It's central, yeah. What Housel argues is that if you want to be successful with money in the long run, it's not about being a genius, really.
It's not.
It's about having the right habits. It's about your mindset.
Huh, interesting.
Like, take Ronald Reed, for example. I mean, he wasn't some financial whiz kid or anything like that.
No, he was a janitor.
Right. He lived pretty simply, saved his money carefully, and just consistently put it in good, solid stocks for years and years.
Decades, I think.
Yeah, decades. And that's it. That's how we did it.
And he ended up with $8 million. It kind of makes those get-rich-quick schemes seem kind of dumb, doesn't it?
Oh, totally. His story is a great example of how powerful just steady, consistent effort can be over time, not some fancy investment strategy.
Right. Okay, so if that's how Ronald Reed did it, how do we explain someone like Mike Tyson then?
Ah, Mike Tyson.
The guy made over $400 million during his boxing career. You'd think she'd be set for life.
You would think so, but that's where the psychology of money comes in.
The psychology, okay.
Even though he was making bank, Tyson actually filed for bankruptcy back in 2003.
No way, really?
Oh, yeah. He spent crazy, made impulsive decisions. Basically, he didn't understand how to manage his money, and it caught up with him.
It's like no matter how much money you make.
You could still lose it all.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of scary.
A little bit unsettling, but also, I guess there's a positive side to it.
What's that?
It means it's not just about hitting the lottery or something.
You got it. Not about luck. It's not about being a genius. It's about making good habits, building something for the long term. That's the big takeaway here. Building wealth is about consistent, smart habits applied over time.
Yeah, like building a house brick by brick.
A perfect analogy.
And speaking of building over time, this makes me think about compounding. I feel like everyone talks about compounding, but Housel actually explains it in a way that really clicked for me.
The way he talks about doubling a penny every day for a month?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah, it's such a good way to show it. You start with 1 penny, then 2, then 4, and at first it just seems like, nothing's happening. But what's so crazy is that over time, that tiny growth, it just explodes.
$5 million at the end of the month. It's wild.
Right.
When I first read that, I was like, wait, hold on. Is that even real?
Haha, I think we all did.
I literally had to get my calculator out. But it just shows you that even small, consistent growth, if you give it enough time, it can lead to some really big results.
It's the snowball effect, and the thing is, it doesn't just apply to money either.
Oh, really?
Yeah, think about it. Knowledge, skills, relationships, anything that grows over time, it all benefits from this compounding effect.
That's a good point. It makes me think about Warren Buffett. I mean, he's like the king of long-term investing. The book actually says he built 99% of his wealth after he turned 50.
It's incredible, isn't it?
How is that even possible? You'd think you have to be young to get those huge returns.
That's what a lot of people think. You need to find that one hot stock or something to get rich quick. But Buffett's success, it's like the opposite of that.
What do you mean?
He didn't get where he is by trying to time the market or take a bunch of risks. He got there by being disciplined, by staying invested for decades, letting that compounding just do its thing over time.
So it really is all about patience.
It's a huge part of it, yeah. There's a quote by Buffett that I love. He says, "I'm in the market beats timing the market."
I've heard that one.
And, his life is a perfect example of that. So if anyone's listening and thinking, oh, I missed out on investing, or I need to win the lottery or something, remember that it's much more about playing the lottery or something.
Yeah, not trying to get rich quick.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. Like slow and steady wins the race, just like Ronald Reed with his simple investments. But, thinking about all this long-term stuff, it kind of makes me wonder, is building wealth really all there is? I mean, is money really the key to happiness? Because that's what we all want, right?
That's the big question, isn't it? And Housel definitely tackles that in the book. He talks about this idea of a happiness plateau.
A happiness plateau.
Yeah, basically it's this idea that after you reach a certain income, having more money doesn't actually make you that much happier.
Really, there's like a limit. So I'm working my butt off for nothing after a certain point.
Well, not exactly nothing. The research seems to show that this plateau happens around like $75,000 a year. Yeah.
$75,000.
After that point, earning more, it doesn't really have a huge impact on your overall happiness.
Okay, but that's easy to say when you're already comfortable, right? I mean, I know I'd sure love to be making over $75,000. I think we all want a little more, just to have some breathing room.
I hear you. It's definitely a matter of perspective, For someone who's struggling to get by, that extra money would be life-changing.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the point is, happiness is kind of a moving target. It's all relative.
Relative. Okay.
Yeah. What might be amazing for someone making $30,000 a year, it wouldn't even be a blip on the radar for someone like Jeff Bezos.
Like if you gave Jeff Bezos another $1 billion, it wouldn't really change his life.
Exactly. So the question Housel asks is, are you using money to buy things that'll just make you happy for a little while? Or are you using it to build a life that has more freedom and more experiences that really make you happy in the long run?
That's such a good point. Are we buying freedom or just more stuff?
It's about figuring out what's actually important to you, and then using your money to get there.
I like that. It's not about denying yourself. It's about being more intentional.
Exactly. And that actually brings us to another big idea that Housel talks about, the role of luck and risk.
Okay, so this is where I get a little confused. I totally believe in hard work and making smart choices, but how much of it is actually up to us? You know what I mean? It feels like you can't ignore the role of luck. Some people just seem to be in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, I get that. We can't just pretend circumstances don't matter. And Housel actually uses a really good example to illustrate this. He talks about Bill Gates.
Okay, yeah, Bill Gates, he's obviously a brilliant guy, super driven.
Totally. But he also had a huge advantage, something that most people back then didn't have.
He had access to a computer when he was like, what, a teenager in the late 60s?
Yeah, which was unheard of back then. Talk about being in the right place at the right time.
That's insane.
And that's the point Housel's making. Gates's success, it came from hard work, for sure, but it was also influenced by things that were totally out of his control. It doesn't mean he didn't deserve his success, but it does show how much chance can play a part in our lives.
So does that mean we should all just buy lottery tickets and hope for the best?
Haha, no, not exactly. It's not about giving up and saying, oh, it's all up to luck, but it is about recognizing that success, it often comes from a mix of things. Some we can control and some we can't. And realizing that, it helps us to be a little more humble, a little more understanding of other people who might not have had the same opportunities.
It's like we're all part of a bigger system and everyone deserves a chance to succeed. Okay, so with all this talk about mindset and psychology and luck, is there anything we can actually do to get better with money? Or are we just kind of stuck with how our brains are wired?
That's what I love about this book. Housel doesn't just leave us with all these big, abstract ideas. He actually gives us some real practical advice on how to improve our relationship with money, how to change our behavior.
All right, let's get down to brass tacks. Like understanding the psychology, that's great and all, but what can we actually do with it? What actions can we take?
Well, and that's what I really appreciate about this book. It's not just a bunch of theories. Housel gives us some really concrete advice, practical stuff that we can actually use. Like, for instance, he really emphasizes how important it is to think long term, instead of just going for instant gratification.
So like instead of spending all my money on a fancy new gadget I don't really need, invest it instead.
Exactly. It's about delaying those impulses, those urges to buy stuff, and remembering what your bigger goals are.
Oh man, I am so guilty of that.
We all are. But just that shift in thinking, that can make all the difference. Another strategy that he talks about that's really important is saving consistently.
Saving, okay.
And it really doesn't matter how much money you make, even if it's just a small amount. If you do it regularly, it'll really start to add up.
thanks to that compounding effect.
Exactly.
So even if it's $5 a week or $10 a week, just make that a habit,
Yeah, it all comes back to those small habits, those consistent actions.
leading to big results.
Right. And speaking of habits, something else that Housel talks about is lifestyle inflation.
Lifestyle inflation.
It's easy to get caught in this trap where every time you get a raise or a promotion, you start spending more. You upgrade your lifestyle.
Oh yeah, you upgrade your car, you get a bigger apartment, you start eating out more.
Yeah, but that can really sabotage your long-term goals.
Oh, I know that all too well. When I got my first big promotion, I was so excited. I went out and got a nicer apartment, a new car.
It's so tempting to do that.
It is. But looking back, I realize I probably could have been a lot smarter with that money. It's so easy to fall into that trap of trying to keep up with everyone else.
Keeping up with the Joneses.
Yeah, exactly.
But just being aware of it, that's a big first step. And instead of just spending all that extra money on stuff, Housel suggests, think about how you can use it to buy freedom.
Freedom.
Experiences that really make you happy. Things that really add value to your life.
Like traveling, or finally starting your own business.
Yeah. Or just having the flexibility to work less,
Having more time.
Right. It's about asking yourself, what kind of life that I really want to live? And then using your money to make that happen.
I love that. It's not about denying yourself things. It's about being intentional.
Yes. And then the last piece of advice that Housel emphasizes that's really important is patience.
Patience.
Building wealth, it takes time.
It does, doesn't it?
It's not something that happens overnight. It's a long game. It takes consistency. It takes discipline.
It does. So if we had to kind of fill up the psychology of money, the key takeaways, it's really about changing our mindset about money, right? Understanding those emotional things that drive our decisions.
Yep.
It's about those small habits, being consistent, and playing the long game.
That's it in a nutshell. And the best part is it's actually really empowering. We have a lot more control over our finances than we think we do.
We do.
It all starts with understanding the psychology behind it, and then making those changes, putting those principles into practice.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. This whole deep dive has really given me a lot to think about. And for anyone listening out there, I challenge you, take one thing, just one idea from what we talked about today, and actually try it out.
Yeah, do it.
See what happens. Maybe set up an automatic savings plan, maybe start tracking your spending, or even just talk to someone about your financial goals. Sometimes just talking about it can make a difference.
It can.
And remember, even small steps, they can lead to big changes.
Absolutely.
Maybe one day you'll be sharing your own amazing wealth building story.
That's what I love to hear.